They didn't disappear. They were buried alive in plain sight. And no one, not the neighbors, not the police, not even the families heard their screams. But in 2002, something far darker was welded into its foundations. 3 girls vanished: Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight. To the world, they were missing. To their captor, they were property. Cleveland, Ohio, a city built on steel, hard work, and quiet suffering. And in those years, something unthinkable happened. The girls stopped being girls. They grew up in captivity. Michelle was the first, taken in 2002. She was 21. Beaten, starved, forgotten by the system. No Amber Alert, no manhunt. You were told they ran away, that they were troubled teens. That sometimes people just vanish. What they didn't tell you is that they were right there. Familiarity, trust, manipulation, laughed with family, hid horror behind a smile. She was walking home from her job at Burger King, her last memory of freedom, a phone call to her sister. Then darkness, in your city, behind boarded windows. Inside a house you could pass every day. The man who took them? Ariel Castro, a school bus driver. Someone trusted to protect children. Someone who waved to neighbors. Inside his modest home at 2207 Seymour Avenue was a dungeon. Chains, bolted doors, drawn curtains. Rooms stripped of humanity. Days became months. Months bled into years. Then Amanda snatched the day before her 17th birthday. A world where evil doesn't wear a monster's mask. It wears the face of the man who waves at your children from a yellow school bus. Gina was just 14 when she disappeared. She was friends with Castro's daughter. That's how he lured her in. And then, silence. Imagine waking up every day, chained to a wall, knowing the sun rises, but never feeling it. Hearing children laugh outside while your own life is crushed into whispers and obedience. This isn't just a crime story. This is a map into a hidden world. And the question you're not supposed to ask is this: how many more are still out there? We're going deeper. Because the House of Horrors is more than wood and brick. It's a symbol of everything society chooses not to see. And once you see it, you don't come back the same. There's something unsettling about silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that screams. The kind that fills a house so completely that even footsteps feel like betrayal. That was life for Amanda, Gina, and Michelle. Every second, every breath. Measured, controlled, watched. She wasn't high profile. No media frenzy, no statewide alerts. She was poor from a broken home. In society's eyes, she had already disappeared long before she was taken. Castro realized he had to be more careful. Amanda endured the same horror, but in 2006 she gave birth. In a kiddie pool, in a filthy room. Without doctors, without help, except for Michelle, forced to act as midwife. But what society dismissed, Castro saw as opportunity. Michelle became his template, his rehearsal, and his favorite victim. His pattern wasn't age or appearance. It was vulnerability. Proximity, trust. Gina knew his daughter. She thought he was safe. That mistake cost her a decade. Ariel Castro didn't just kidnap them. He dismantled their sense of time. Chains on ankles, makeshift alarms, doors locked from the outside. They were allowed to shower only twice a week. Dependency. It's not just physical captivity, it's psychological collapse. Eat once or twice a day. Beatings came without warning. But sometimes, so did crumbs of mercy, a TV, a journal, a hot meal. This was psychological warfare. One moment he was a tyrant, the next a provider. It made them doubt their own judgment, question their sanity. He stripped away the calendar, the seasons, the feeling of progress. Days weren't marked by dates, but by pain. Abuse was routine. Hope was dangerous. The smallest resistance could bring starvation. In that time, she was beaten so severely that she lost vision in one eye. She became pregnant multiple times, but every time, Castro starved and assaulted her until she miscarried. It wasn't enough to imprison her. He wanted to erase her identity, to make her doubt she ever existed outside his walls. She began to teach her, reading, singing, even pretending their room was a real home. Amanda created the illusion of freedom inside a prison, because that's what mothers do. Even in hell, a whispered prayer could trigger isolation, and yet, they endured. Michelle Knight was Castro's first prisoner, and in many ways, the most forgotten. She was held the longest, over 11 years. Then came Amanda. She was different. Her disappearance sparked news. Her family searched. Her name was spoken. That changed things. A child born in captivity. Her name was Jocelyn. And Jocelyn changed everything. Amanda made a silent vow. If she couldn't escape, she would at least protect her daughter. Gina was the youngest, taken at 14. Her presence shattered the illusion that Castro had a type. The house became a system. Each girl in a different room. This is how control works. Not through constant violence, but through unpredictable kindness. It creates confusion. And that collapse was exactly what Castro wanted. But something was about to fracture. Something he couldn't predict. And if you've followed this far, I want you to write the phrase, "I see the hidden prison," twice in the comments. Say it to awaken the part of you that refuses to be blind. Imagine spending over 3,600 days inside a single building, never walking outside, never feeling the sun on your skin, never hearing your name without fear. For Amanda Berry, Michelle Knight, and Gina DeJesus, that wasn't imagination, it was reality. One that turned their minds into war zones. Because when you're locked in a house built on fear, the only real weapon you have left is the strength to remember who you are. But here's the part most people miss. Their survival wasn't just physical. It was intellectual, psychological, spiritual. Castro tried to erase that. Every day. He gave them fake names, restricted their speech, played mind games, like telling them no one was looking, that their families had forgotten them, that escape would only bring death. It's one thing to be chained. It's another to be convinced that the chains are all you'll ever know. And yet, they resisted. And yet, just miles from a bustling city, 3 human beings were vanishing into silence, right under everyone's nose. Michelle Knight, despite everything, began writing poetry. On scraps of paper, with broken pencils. Each word was an act of defiance. Amanda kept a mental calendar, a secret rebellion against time itself. It's a mirror, a question. How many Castro houses exist in plain sight today, in your city, your country, your block? Because monsters don't always hide in shadows, Amanda noticed. It was a moment measured not in seconds, but in possibilities. Could it be a trap? Was it another mind game? Or was it real? Sometimes they mow their lawns and wave at neighbors. Gina, the youngest, began memorizing songs to preserve a sense of self. Kicked, screamed, but the storm door was locked. That's when Charles Ramsey, a neighbor, heard her. He helped her break free. Amanda escaped and called 911. Music, memory, and fragments of faith became their last defense against complete erasure. This wasn't an isolated cabin in the wilderness. This was a working-class neighborhood in Cleveland, and nobody knew. Meanwhile, the world outside kept turning. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. The war in Iraq began and ended. Smartphones were invented. Barack Obama became president. That's what makes this story more disturbing than fiction. Truth is the death of all prisons. But here's the psychological riddle. Did nobody know? Or did nobody want to know? Castro was calculated. He boarded up windows, played loud music, warned his victims to stay silent when visitors arrived. When suspicions did arise, neighbors hearing screams, strange sightings, they were dismissed. The house looked normal enough. And normal is the perfect disguise for evil. This isn't just a story about one man's cruelty, but something unexpected was brewing, a seed of rebellion. And it began, as revolutions often do, with a mistake. In 2013, Castro forgot to lock one of the doors. She took the risk. She ran to the front door. The words she spoke into that phone would shatter 10 years of silence. "Help me. I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped. And I've been missing for 10 years. The system broke that day. And so did Castro's illusion of control. Now, are you beginning to see the bigger picture? What Castro feared most wasn't justice. It was exposure. Because exposure is the enemy of control. The door had finally cracked open, and with it, a decade's worth of darkness began to bleed into the daylight. When police arrived at 2207 Seymour Avenue, what they found was beyond comprehension. Amanda Berry ran into their arms. Then she said 6 words that made time stop. "There are 2 more girls inside." What followed was a descent into hell. Rooms rigged to imprison, isolate, control. They found diaries, horrific accounts of beatings, rape, miscarriages. Castro had even forced Michelle to act as a midwife for Amanda's child, a girl born in captivity. He threatened to kill them all if the baby cried too loud. Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus were let out by officers who could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Police had visited the house multiple times. Neighbors had suspicions, but each time, normalcy provided cover. A little paint, a smile at the door, loud music and drawn blinds. In a world addicted to appearances, Castro had weaponized invisibility. Starved, beaten, manipulated for over 10 years, and yet, somehow, still alive, still human. That's what truly disturbed investigators. That these women had been subjected to the worst of what one man could do, and yet had not become what he wanted them to be. About the awareness that awakens when we stop ignoring what is inconvenient and start looking behind the curtain. It was the strength of 3 women who refused to disappear, even when the world let them vanish. Inside the house, authorities found chains, locks, a dungeon disguised as bedrooms. But beneath the horror lay something far more chilling: how easily it had all gone unnoticed. They are no longer victims. They are survivors, symbols, reminders. This wasn't just a crime, it was a system failure. An uncomfortable truth: the world is filled with hidden rooms. People in pain, evils we refuse to see. And yet, just like Amanda, Michelle, and Gina, the act of witnessing is power. And here's where you come in. If you've made it this far, then you're not just watching a story, you're being initiated into a deeper awareness. If you understand that, truly, then I want you to comment the phrase, "I see the hidden door." I see the hidden door. Comment it twice. Why? Because repetition locks it into your identity. Because when you speak the unspeakable, you take back control from those who thrive on silence. This video isn't about Ariel Castro. It's not even about the system. It's about you. When the girls were freed, the media called it the miracle in Cleveland. But it wasn't a miracle. It was endurance. It was strategy. Today, Amanda raises her daughter. Michelle became an advocate, a public speaker, a symbol of unbreakable will. Gina works to help missing children. But for every Amanda, Michelle, and Gina, how many remain locked away, unnoticed, unheard? That's the question no one wants to ask. But we just did. It is tempting to believe that Ariel Castro was an anomaly, a singular monster in a quiet neighborhood. But what if I told you his story is just a symptom, a flicker of a much older flame? Throughout history, captivity has rarely looked like metal chains and dark basements. Stripped of names, given new identities, made to call their captor's father. They were broken in the mind first, so the body would follow. Sound familiar? A real, declassified CIA experiment where citizens were unknowingly drugged, isolated, and brainwashed. To erase the self, To create obedience so absolute, the goal? The subject wouldn't even know they were controlled. A cycle where the illusion of freedom hides the absence of power. And the scariest part? Most people defend their own cage. They decorate it, personalize it, call it normal life. No, the most effective prisons are psychological, constructed with belief, illusion, fear. And those who build them wear suits, not ski masks. A kind of vision only the few dare to see. They convinced people that doubt itself was a crime, that questioning authority was heresy, that silence was salvation. You're a candidate. For what? Liberation. Entertainment distracts, advertising numbs, and silence is rewarded. Think about it, but not the kind that's given, the kind that's earned. That's why stories like Castro's get sensationalized, but not contextualized, because if people truly saw the pattern, they'd break free. That wasn't just an act of courage, it was awakening. It was the moment she realized the door had never been as locked as he made her believe. The same is true for you. Mental loops, social loops, economic loops. Let's look deeper. Algorithms feed us what to believe. Surveillance knows what you desire before you do. In ancient Assyria, slaves were not only chained, they were indoctrinated. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Inquisition didn't simply torture bodies, they warped perceptions. They know this. That's why dark history repeats. Fast forward to the 20th century, Project Nicultra. And now, we live in the most sophisticated captivity system ever created, and most of us don't even see it. Amanda, Michelle, and Gina were literally imprisoned. But what if I told you, metaphorically, you might be too? Because captivity in the modern age isn't about locks, it's about loops. That's how deep the programming goes. But here's the secret. Awareness is the first crack. When Amanda Berry picked up that phone and called 911, when you recognize the patterns, when you see the parallels between personal captivity and global control, you begin to access a higher truth. And the elites? You watching this right now, you're not just an audience. Amanda, Michelle, and Gina didn't just survive a decade in hell. They exposed the blueprint. Now it's your move. Let's pull the curtain all the way back. You think you know how monsters operate? No, monsters don't come with horns and howls. They come with routine, with familiarity, with smiles that don't quite reach the eyes, and they don't abduct in alleyways. They infiltrate trust. That's how Ariel Castro held 3 women for over 10 years, not with chains alone, but with conditioning. Gina DeJesus knew his daughter. Michelle Knight had once been in his car. Family, friends, news, light, gone. Replace it with one voice. The captors. Repetition becomes reality. It's how people survive in abusive relationships, dead-end jobs, oppressive regimes. Not with resistance, but adaptation. You're worthless. No one is looking for you. If you leave, they'll hate you. Sound extreme? Maybe, but pay attention. Isn't this the same voice many people hear inside their own minds every day? Amanda Berry trusted the neighborhood. That was the first trap, the illusion of safety. A tool that captors, cults, governments, and media empires all use. Make the prison look like home. Once inside, the grooming begins. And the first step is awareness. First, isolation. Cut them off from the outside world. It's even in systems we praise. Schools that shame curiosity, jobs that crush spirit, media that tells you what to think. Next, routine. Days blur into each other. Predictability numbs the fight instinct. Mondays become Tuesdays become years. Then, reward and punishment. Castro would sometimes offer kindness. A hot shower, demolished. But the system that allowed it, still standing. A meal, ATV, and just like that, trauma bonds form. The victim confuses cruelty with care. Gratitude grows in the soil of suffering. And soon, they're not just imprisoned. And how truth tellers, pattern breakers, rebels of consciousness, are rising. They're loyal. This is the blueprint of psychological captivity. And it doesn't stay in basements. It's in cults, in radical politics, in fanatical movements. Now ask yourself, who benefits from you feeling powerless? Because this isn't just history. This is design. But here's where everything flips. Pay attention, because this is the key the captors never want you to find. The mind that was programmed can be reprogrammed. Comment right now, I see the cage, I break the code. Repeat it. I see the cage, I break the code. Not for the algorithm, for you. To lock in your transformation. Because once you see the hidden pattern, it never owns you again. Castro's house is gone now. So the question isn't just, how did this happen? It's where else is it happening right now? And more importantly, what role are you playing in it? In the final sections, we'll map out the modern structures of control, not just criminal, but cultural. If you're still here, you were meant to hear this. The world wants you asleep, but you're waking up. What if I told you the story of Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight is not an isolated nightmare, but a template? The same tactics Ariel Castro used in that boarded-up Cleveland home are used legally by systems that claim to protect you. You just don't see the bars. Because the most powerful cages are invisible. Let's trace the pattern: isolation, repetition, control. And if you try to break the script, the algorithm punishes you, suppresses you, labels you. You think you're free because you have a phone. But what if that screen is the new cell? It tracks you, feeds you only what you've been programmed to want, locks you into belief bubbles, trains your attention span, your thoughts, your emotions. You're not being kidnapped in the physical sense. You're being narratively hijacked. And then there's school, mass education designed not to liberate your mind, but to standardize it. Taught to obey, memorize, never question. From a young age, you're placed in ranks, judged by compliance, graded on regurgitation. Creativity, discouraged. Original thought, labeled defiance. It's the same system. Repeat after me. The walls have changed, but the prison remains. And just like the women who began to believe no one was looking for them, society teaches you this same lie. That you're alone, that your suffering is normal, that you're lucky to be where you are. But here's the truth, and they won't like that you're hearing it. You were born powerful, curious, capable of seeing the cracks in the facade, but somewhere along the way, they replaced your fire with fear. That's why dark history matters. Not because it shocks, but because it reveals the mechanics of manipulation. That's about the world. We need to dismantle the structures that create them, that justify them, that reward their silence. Ariel Castro's crimes were exposed. But what about the crimes no one names? The ones committed by culture, by silence, by complicity. Think. Michelle Knight was repeatedly told she didn't matter, not even to the public. Her name was forgotten. She was the oldest, poor, had a troubled past. The media focused on Amanda and Gina. Even in freedom, hierarchies persisted. Even in liberation, invisible value systems whispered, some victims are more worthy than others. That's not just about a basement in Ohio. We don't just need to find captors. Ask yourself, where in your life have you been silenced? Where have you accepted captivity because it was disguised as comfort, and more dangerously? Where have you played the role of the captor, limiting others out of your own fear? It's a hard question, but necessary. They say survival is the end of the nightmare. But for Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight, the moment they stepped out of that crumbling house in Cleveland wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a much deeper war. The war within. Your voice stolen, your will shattered. And then, suddenly, the world explodes around you. Flashing cameras, police sirens, headlines, strangers calling you hero, while the trauma in your bones still whispers, "You are broken." Imagine this. You've been locked in silence for over a decade. How do you come back from that? How do you speak when you've been taught your pain is inconvenient? Michelle Knight would later say, "I was free, but I still felt like a prisoner." That's the haunting truth few understand. Physical escape is only one part of liberation. The psychological chains take longer to break, and most people never do. But Michelle did. She rewired her life from the ashes. But because she made meaning of it, she now gives voice to others. Gina co-founded a foundation to find missing children, so others wouldn't have vanished into the void like she did. She didn't just survive Ariel Castro. It's how you reclaim power without ever raising a fist. She changed her name to Lily Rose Lee, a symbolic rebirth. She wrote a book, faced the media, spoke to other victims. Her story transformed from tragedy into weapon, not because it erased the pain. And that's what they never teach you, that healing is rebellion. In a world that feeds on fear and obedience, choosing to heal, choosing to feel again, that's a radical act. Gina and Amanda followed their own paths. Amanda became a reporter. Imagine that. After a decade of being unheard, do you see it now? This wasn't just survival. There are still untold women, children, men, hidden in basements, lost in systems, forgotten by the media. This was alchemical transformation. What was meant to break them became the engine of purpose. But here's the truth most ignore. Not everyone gets that chance. And there are parts of you still trapped. Parts locked in routines, toxic beliefs, generational pain, invisible trauma passed down like an inheritance nobody asked for. About how easily we look away from what makes us uncomfortable, and how urgently we need to stop. Let it spread like wildfire, not for clicks, but for truth. So now I ask you, not as a viewer, but as a brother, a sister, a reflection. What cage are you still living in? What story do you tell yourself that keeps you small? And are you ready to rewrite it? If this story awakened something inside you, if you felt the echo of their pain inside your own life, comment this phrase twice below. My mind is no longer a cage. My mind is no longer a cage. Let it be your declaration, because history repeats. Unless we break the cycle, this wasn't just about Ariel Castro. This was about the shadows beneath society's surface. So share this video. Because if 3 forgotten girls can survive hell, rise, and reshape the world with their scars, then maybe, just maybe, so can you.